Thank you for joining us today. We are very excited to launch Hero Wired, and we are looking forward to having a really great chat with Steve, getting his views on education, how he believes it can be reimagined, and what our future holds. From your perspective and Singularity University's perspective, what do you think? What will the technology skills be? And let's not go in the future, let's talk about for the next 3 years, 5 years, how this will evolve, what are the new skills which are going to come in?
Yeah, I think whatever happens, Akshay, for sure, we're going to have people think about a couple of things. One, how do you learn? And I know that sounds perhaps very generic, but how do you learn? Do you learn best by listening to something, by seeing something, by writing something, by reading something, talking about it with people? I learn through that combination. Sometimes I read a bit, then I discuss it with friends. Sometimes I'll reach out to someone and say, I don't understand, help me learn more. So I think how? Because kids may be coming out with just saying, well, I learned by reading a book or what the teacher handed me. I think this idea that I shared about, hey, introduce me to a scientist that may be in that field and he or she can share a little bit of work. Tremendous. So I think that will be, how does someone learn is important. Number two, I think reading a lot and understanding what's happening around you is critical. So I just think that too many young people and too many people of all ages, frankly, live in a bubble in which they don't know what's happening. So I would love to talk with you at another time about what is happening with entrepreneurship in India. What is happening with entrepreneurship in different countries? You and I would have a good discussion about what is Rwanda doing as a nation in Africa that is also thinking deeply about the human capital that it has. What's happening in Bangladesh? What's happening in any market you pick? Now, you would be a good partner for me to discuss that with because you have a big perspective. If you only thought about what was happening in any one market and you didn't care about what's happening in other markets, then it wouldn't be a very fruitful discussion for either of us. So I think the idea of people being open to understanding. I might live in Singapore, but I know what's happening in Vietnam and Thailand and Indonesia because I care. And that makes my ability to discuss things with people a little bit richer. And I think that's one of the skills we need to always be pushing, whether you're an educator or an educatee, whether you are the student or the teacher, the idea of saying, I know something about the world around me is critical. And I think sometimes the world lets us look at only what is affecting us. And I think that has been a problem for many countries, including the United States and other countries that get very focused on what's happening in a geography to the exclusion of what's happening elsewhere. Climate, as an example, affects everybody. There's no way you can think about pollution in California and not think about pollution in every other country as well, because we're one global community. As one example, the pandemic has proven that in spades. You'd say, oh, I don't know, it's happening over there. Well, a week later, it's happening over where you are. And we've learned that in very real terms. So being open to learning, understanding how you learn, being open to the world around you, I think are two core components that anyone thinking about how do they prepare for the future, how do they learn, what skills? Skills are not measured by, I know Python, I know C++. I think these are just specific tools. The skill, I think, is more being aware of yourself, right? I like working with entrepreneurs. Some people don't like working with entrepreneurs because it's a very uncertain path. I enjoy that path. So I know that about myself. If people can continue to be aware, and I know it doesn't happen easily as a young person, but just being open to that experimentation, I think gives you a lot of confidence about where you fit and what you can be good at.
Steve, you've touched on a topic which is very close to my heart, which is entrepreneurship. Now, to encourage entrepreneurship, how can one create a enabling environment? In certain countries, we don't have the safety net, and failure is frowned upon. while we all know the risks associated with entrepreneurship are very high, and for us as a nation, we need more job creators than job seekers. And large part of the globe need people to create more jobs. So what is that, what and how do we create an enabling environment which will encourage young people to take the plunge?
I'm going to come back to the words that I used. I think entrepreneurship starts with, are you curious, confident, and courageous? So if we can encourage that through the learning journey, then the idea of saying, well, I may not know the answers. In fact, I certainly don't know the answers as I start in this journey of entrepreneurship, but I have a certain amount of confidence and courage inside, right? And I'm willing to try that. That, I think, is 90% of being an entrepreneur, is having thick skin and being willing to just keep going, right? It's much easier to go to work in a company where somebody upstairs says, do these 3 things, and then you can take your lunch break. And that's not to be disrespectful to anyone. It's just some people prefer that structure. I think what we need to continue to do is to say, that's great. And the world needs lots of people like that too. But we also need to think about building and creating and solving. Because every big company today wasn't at some point in its journey. There is no company on the planet that was brought to life as a big company. And the only thing that you could consider is if there was a public sector company that was spun out and suddenly then privatized, maybe that. But otherwise, everything was created from scratch. IBM was an entrepreneur's dream. Google was an entrepreneur's dream, so on and so on and so on, right? Hero was an entrepreneur's dream. So all of these things have to have someone that says, I'm going to give this a try. I think what we can do is encourage people not to be fearful about, do they have the idea? What I find is that many people say, well, I'd love to do that, but I don't have, the next Facebook in my head. Like, how do I create that? My answer is always working with other people and joining forces with other people is really how companies are built. It's not like, Zuckerberg didn't start Facebook on his own and build it with his own bare hands. There's many people, including my neighbor, I'm pointing out the window, including my neighbor across the street, was one of the co-founders of Facebook and now called Singapore Home. So all of these are team effort. And I think the important thing for us to get the message across is you don't have to think of the next Facebook, the next Google. If you see a problem that's worth solving, and there are enough people that believe it's worth having solved, because if you're working on a problem no one cares about, that's not going to go very far. But if you listen to most entrepreneurs, in fact, there's a Singaporean entrepreneur that has built a company called Razer, which is famous in gaming. And if you listen to him, he was an attorney who said, as a gamer, I was unsatisfied with some of the technology that I could lay my hands on. I wanted better headsets, better keyboards, better monitors. So I decided to go and fix that because I cared about it, and so did people that I knew. Well, now it's $1 billion company. So what I would say is it's not like he sat in a room and said, what's the coolest thing I can think of to create from scratch? He found a problem that he felt was worth solving, and he worked with other people that agreed, and he found that there was a lot of people that wanted that solution. So I think, back to your point about job creators, working together to say, I'm good at this, you're good at that, she's good at this other thing, the 3 of us can go form a company on this problem. That's entrepreneurship. Too many people get stuck trying to visualize that they have to come up with some idea that no one's ever thought of and then form it. And they say, well, since I can't do that, I might as well not start. But that's not the deal. There's always something that has to be improved. Can you improve water, sanitation? Oh, that's a worldwide market. Can you improve food distribution? Worldwide market. Can you improve the recycling process to put less things in the ground or burn less things? Worldwide market. Can you think of packaging food without plastic waste? Worldwide market. All of these things actually represent worldwide markets. And so my only message would be, don't tell yourself that you have to come up with some idea that no one in history has ever thought of, because very few people do.
Now, coming to my next question, Steve, what are your views on traditional education and edtech? Do you think at some point these two will merge or they will continue coexisting in silos?
If you remember, that we have e-commerce and physical stores, like they were two different things. Now, of course, you don't think about this in retail. You would think, I mean, take a look at Flipkart or any example. So you think about these things, which is, I don't think e-commerce or a store. I think when I want to purchase something, what's the right way to do that? It might be in person because I'd like to experience the product before I purchase it. It might be, I know what I need. I just need 2 more of them. Please do that online. Those have now become seamless, so to speak. Fintech would be another example. When you take a look at Paytm, or you take a look at any of these examples where you don't say, do I need a bank or do I have a mobile payment app? The answer is they're different things. I need them for different reasons. If I'm going to purchase an asset and I need to think about a long-term loan, I need to just pay the bill at the restaurant, I have a mobile app. So fintech and banking have become inextricably linked. And I see the same path for education. Today I go to a school, I sit in a classroom. I'm a big fan, and Singularity is working on this as we speak, about neuroadaptive learning, which is even with a headset, you can say, I am getting feedback. I'm getting EEG signals that come back and say, this is making sense. It's not making sense. I look at pupil dilation and eye movement. Is someone paying attention? EdTech is not a COVID fad. It's not a short-term thing. There will not be education in the future that is not enabled by technology, just to say it that way.
Great, Steve. Let me come to my last question. In the next 2 to 3 years, what do you see will be the new technologies which are coming in? I know Singularity does a lot of work on future of technologies, and they map the new technologies which have come in the last 24 months. So which are the ones you would see which will get operationalized in 2022 or 2023?
Mm-hmm. For sure, I think things that involve automation will continue to increase. I think our goal, as it is for many people, would be anything that is dirty, dangerous, dull, using those sorts of words, we should continue to automate. We do not want human beings cleaning sewer pipes. We do not want human beings trying to, disarm explosives in a minefield. I mean, some of these things are just morally obvious that we would want automation, robotics to be able to help us with, and we can. So I would say in the next 24 months, things around autonomous transportation, like for example, here in Singapore, we're experimenting with driverless buses to think about moving people on the island safely, but in more efficient ways. So automation around transportation, and I hope AI around healthcare, which is my other committed belief. We need more healthcare in the world to get more people served, and we can't do that without adding automation. There's just too many people and not enough doctors and nurses. Certainly things around food. We need more climate-resistant food, things like drought-resistant rice, less waste. These things are going to be important. We have a lot of people working on food-related products because we have far too many people in the world that are starving, and we need to work hard to try and think of how we can bring more food to people without putting more strain on the planet. Obviously, things like growing tomatoes in Australia and flying them halfway around the world is not the best way for us to get food to people while also hurting the planet. So we need to think about that. Those would be a few examples. And I'd love for us to work with entrepreneurs that you see, that you have knowledge of in the ecosystem, because as I mentioned earlier, India has more intellectual capital than probably any country on the planet. And so it's just a question now of how can we try and really benefit the world from that. The best thing that we can do is just say, I don't know the answers, but that's okay, because I know that together with others, we'll find the answers. So please count on me Since I live in Singapore, at least I'm your neighbor. I'm happy to be of help personally. Singularity University looks forward to collaborating with what you're doing at HeroX and BMU. So please count on us to be a good teammate, because this is a team sport. This is bigger than any of us. It's really, truly a team sport.